Welcome to Muhammadi Trust. We are resuming our Muharram programs, and for perhaps for the first time after so many years, we are holding it here in this hall, which has been renovated and ready to welcome all the participants and all the Azadaz of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Bar Muhammad Ali Muhammad Balantar Salawat.
Allahumma salli أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. استغفر الله ربي واتوب اليه. استغفر الله ربي واتوب اليه. استغفر الله ربي واتوب اليه. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. وأتيته بالكساء اليماني فأتيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا صلاة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء فقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسين أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي وشافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. وأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ وقال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بذاتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حارمهم وسلم لمن صالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم. فهل تأذنوا لي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم؟ فقال رسول الله عليه السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل. فقال لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل العام وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم الله وفرج الله حمه ولا مغموم الله وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال عليه السلام فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Assalamu alaikum. So I'm going to read the volume of name from the Sahifa Sajidiyya. So it's a supplication from the book written by Imam Zayn al-Sudan. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, you are merciful, you are compassionate. In the name of God, you are merciful, you are compassionate. Praise belongs to God, who allowed none to witness when he created the heavens and the earth, and who took no helper when he authored the spirits. He has no associate in divinity, and no support in unity. Tongues fall silent before the limit of describing him. Intellects fail before the core of knowing him. Tyrants fall low in awe of him. Faces are humbled in fear of him, and everything mighty yields to his mightiness. So to thee belongs praise again and again, well measured, continuously, methodically. And may his blessings be upon his messenger endlessly, his salutation everlastingly, eternally. O God, make the beginning of this day of my righteousness, its middle prosperity, and its end success. I seek refuge in thee from a day whose beginning is fright, whose middle is anxiety, and whose end is pain. O God, I pray forgiveness from thee for every vow I have vowed, every promise I have promised, and every pledge I have pledged, and then failed to keep for thee. I ask thee concerning the complaints of thy servants against me, if there is a servant from among thy servants, or a handmaid from among thy handmaids, who has against me a complaint, because I have wronged him in respect to himself, his reputation, his property, his wife or his child. Evil words I have spoken about him in his absence, an imposition upon him through inclination, caprice, scorn, zeal, false show bigotry, whether he be absent or present, alive or dead, such that my hand has fallen short, and my capacity has been too narrow to make restitution to him, or to null my obligation to him. I ask thee, O he who owns all objects of need, which are granted by his will, and hasten to his desire, that thou blessest Muhammad and the household of Muhammad. Makest the one I have wronged satisfied with me, in the manner that thou willest. And givest me mercy from thee. Forgiveness decreases thee not, and giving injures thee not. O most merciful of the merciful. O God, give me on every Monday 2 favors from thee, the felicity to obey thee at its beginning, and the favor of thy forgiveness at its end. O he who is God, and none other than whom grants forgiveness for sins. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
بر محمد آل محمد بلندتر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
Right to the Imam in the Manan بلندتر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
بعد دیگر بلندتر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Right to the Fatima Salaam Alaiha بلندتر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
مرتبہ مل کر بلند آواز سے درود بھیجیں مامور بھائی.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Ah
محمد آل محمد صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
سلام کے اندر شاید پیش خدمت کرنے کا موقع ملتا ہے، بلند آواز سے دعا سے دیکھو۔
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
خبر ہے سادات کی بستی کے اجڑنے کی خبر ہے درپیش ہے وہ غم کے جہاں زیر و زبر ہے گلچا گریباں ہے صبا خاک بسر ہے گل رو صفت غنچہ کمر بستہ کھڑے ہیں سب ایک جگہ صورت گلدستہ کھڑے ہیں لے لے کے بلائیں یہی سب کرتی ہیں تقریر اس گرمی کے موسم میں کہاں جاتے ہیں شبیر سمجھاتی ہے بھائی کو اب شاہ کی ہمشیر مسلم کا خط آئے تو کریں پوچھ کی تدبیر للہ ابھی قبر پیمبر کو نہ چھوڑے گھر فاطمہ زہرا کا ہے اس گھر کو نہ چھوڑے رخصت کو ابھی قبر پیمبر پہ ہے جانا کیا جانیے پھر ہو کے نہ ہوئے میرا آنا اماں کی لہر پر ہے ابھی اشک بہانا اس مرکز اکبر کو ہے آنکھوں سے لگانا آخر تو لیے جاتی ہے تقدیر وطن سے چلتے ہوئے ملنا ہے ابھی قبر حسن سے بانوں کو اشارہ کیا حضرت نے کہ جاؤ اکبر کو بلاؤ علی اصغر کو بھی لاؤ آئے علی اکبر تو کہا شاہ نے آؤ روٹھی ہے بہن تم سے گلے اس کو لگاؤ چلتے ہوئے جی بھر کے ذرا پیار تو کر لو لینے انہیں کب آؤ گے اقرار تو کر لو فرزند پیمبر کا
اور محمد آل محمد صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
برائے کچھ دودھ امام زمانہ پر صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
Before we start, a Surah Al-Fatiha for all our Marhumin, because it is because of them that we are here today. sallallahu alayka ya Rasulullah wa ahl baytika al-mazlumin. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله لاق العهد مني بزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. ويا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. The first Majlis, second day of Muharram. It's the beginning of a season that we repeatedly come back to every year. We deck our houses in black. We wear black. We give our children black to wear. We eat simply. We discourse simply. We behave simply. We remember those who have passed and their pain and their suffering. And we memorialize them, and through our memory make them present to us. That pain and suffering is something which brings about a sense of grief, and yet that grief is something which is central to our nature as humans. It is the grief that we have for Imam Hussein and his followers and his family at Karbala, which actually allows us to live life. It allows us to deal with the suffering that we have in life. It is what bears us through the journey in this life. It attests to our humanity. Because one of the key things that distinguishes humans is precisely the ability to feel grief, to feel a certain kind of attachment, where what the person who is suffering, who you love, feels is something that you feel as well. You have an attachment that is heart to heart in that sense, because of your attachment to them. And of course there are many things which happen in life which are sorrowful and which are sad. Many tragedies befall people in the world. Many things which are horrific. And yet it is not that which is horrific and tragic which is in itself worthy of commemoration or recognition. It is the person to whom it happens. And that is the significance of why we gather. It's because of the status we ascribe to those individuals. It is because it is Imam Hussein and his family who are being slaughtered in the fields of Karbala that we gather. It is not anyone else. It is the very countenance of the divine. It is the very comprehensive name of God who is there lying, bleeding and bloodied and injured on the ground. That is the fundamental issue. It's not anything else. So we can feel grief and sorrow about others, but there is something special about that because of the attachment that we have to it, to him. And this is something that we are told consistently by the Ahlul Bayt themselves. And for that I want to just cite a few very well-known narrations from Imam Ali al-Rida alayhi salam. In the sense that you should feel what those whom you love feel. So the Imam says that when the month of Muharram would arrive, my father, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, he would never be seen laughing. He would be sad, he would be sorrowful, and as the days went towards Ashra, that sense of grief and weeping and tragedy will get more and more intense and would culminate on that 10th day. So this is how the Ahlul Bayt felt about it. And if they are the exemplars, and I'll come back throughout these days on the question of what does it mean for the Ahlul Bayt to be exemplars for us, then surely that is enough of a motivation and inducement for us to do the same. Another very famous saying of Imam Rida is that, and this is, it gives you a sense of what that grief and sorrow that they felt about their ancestor. He says the killing of Hussein and our dear ones makes us weep so much that our eyes become sore. And leaves us in such pain in qalb and in bala, in this kind of sense of affliction all the way to the end of time. This is the status of the Ahlul Bayt because of what has happened in Karbala. And then he says, and so for those who have something to weep about, those who are sad, this is also one of the reasons why whenever we commemorate something which is sorrowful for us, such as the passing of one of our dear ones, we have a Majalis. So for those who want to weep, weep for Hussein, because it is that which is the only way to relieve yourselves and to relieve the burden of your sin. And the third narration that I want to mention is a very famous and it's a very long one that Imam Rida had a conversation with one of his followers, Ibn Shabi. And it's a very powerful narration which has many things in it which are recommended. And I'm just going to pick out some things from that. And he starts off by saying, Ibn Shabi, you know, Muharram was a month which in the previous times for the Arabs was a month in which conflict was not allowed. It's called Muharram because fighting and conflict is not allowed. The tribes were not supposed to fight each other, but rather were supposed to be in a state of truce because of the sanctity of the month. But this people who claimed to be followers of the Prophet did not respect the sanctity of the month, but rather they killed the Prophet's own grandson, and they plundered his camp, and they captured and took his women as slaves. This is something for which God will never forgive them. That's the first thing he says, that there's a violation which happens. It's immense. And then he says, of course, and this is the bit which everyone remembers, he says, O Shabib, Ibn Shabib, if you want to cry over anything, cry over Hussein. Because he was slaughtered like a sheep is slaughtered. He was slaughtered like a sheep is slaughtered without any water. Because even when you slaughter a sheep, you give the sheep water before you slaughter it. And with him were slaughtered 18 of the best people on the earth, of which there is no peer. There are no peers, and he's talking about the 18 men of the Banu Hashim. And of course, by extension, he means also those who were killed with him. And it was such that the heavens and the earth cried over him. And the angels descended. And when the angels descended, when they heard something was happening in Karbala, and they found that the Imam had been slaughtered this way, they poured dust on their heads. They disheveled themselves. They ripped their clothes and their hair. And they will remain in this state until the end of time. This is what the angels, who will be the closest beings to God, this is how they responded to what happened. And their slogan till the end of time will be Ya Risalat Hussein, which is the famous slogan which you're all familiar with. And then he mentions other things about why it's important for us to commemorate and visit the Imam. And he says, if you want to feel the pleasure of meeting, encountering God, and it's interesting how he says that, meet and encounter God and there is no sin on you, then visit Hussein. Go and visit Hussein. And I will discuss this a bit later. Visiting Hussein has two senses. One is the actual physical motion of going on pilgrimage to Karbala, but the other sense is visit him wherever you are by calling upon him, by greeting him, by saying Assalamu alaikum ya Aba Abdullah. Because that very act is a making present of the Imam. That is the remembrance, is the presence of the Imam, which is my main theme. And he also says, if you want to have the reward of those who are with Hussein at Karbala, then you should say, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum wa nafuza fawzan azima, as we say all the time in the ziyarah. Would that I were with you, would that we were with you, so that we could also have achieved a great success. And the final element of the hadith I want to mention is when the Imam says, "Oh, Ibn Sharif, if you want to be with us at the highest levels of heaven, if you want to be with us at the highest level of heaven, then grieve when we grieve. Be sorrowful when we are sorrowful, and be happy when we are happy. And steadfast to our walaya." Walaya is another very important thing that I'm going to be stressing throughout these nights. Steadfast to our walaya, because it is that walaya with which you will be raised. Everyone in life has a certain walaya, everyone has a certain attachment, and it is that attachment by which one is judged and raised in the resurrection, the afterlife. So there's various things which the Imam here is saying, which gives you a sense of what the significance is of this commemoration, what the significance is of crying, what the significance is of expressing grief for the Imam and his followers. And one of the ways in which it is our tradition, not just in the subcontinent but in other places, to have a certain structure of a Majalis, where we start with some poetry and salam and source and marsiya. Often in the Arabic Majalis you start with a bit of the recounting of the Masani before you get into it. It's because there's a basic psychological understanding that when you cry, it softens the heart and it opens the senses. It allows you then, when you have wept, to receive things. It allows a certain cleansing of the heart to then receive what is the truth. Light that illuminates the heart is much easier to access once you are in that state of crying. And this is also why it's often said that if you have certain wishes and desires and you want to supplicate God and do dua, then the best thing is to cry with it, because it softens the heart, it inclines it towards God and the light. So this is, in a sense, structurally what we do and how we do it. Now, I just want to quickly say something about what I want to do over the next nights. The topic I have given is the presence of the Ahlul Bayt and Karbala in our lives. And so, it should be clear from that I'm talking about the idea of presence, which is related directly to memory. I'm talking about the Ahlul Bayt, which means I will be talking about this issue of walaya, and I'll explain that more in the coming days. And I am also talking about what that means for us and how does it find its presence in our lives. And along the way, one of the things I will do is I will talk about the question of beauty and aesthetics, of why it is that we do things in the ways we do it, so that we can understand certain kinds of things. and then end with some discussions of what are the ethical implications of these practices. Now, the question of beauty I think is very important because in that sense, that journey that I want to take you, which is also the journey, as we heard in the Marsiya, of the Imam from Medina to Karbala, is a journey of beauty. It's one in which every element of what the Imam did is an expression of the beauty of his character and the beauty of his person. And it forces you to think a bit more deeply about what do we mean by beauty. Because we know at the end of that process, famously at the court of Yazid, when it was said to Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha, what did you think of, what did you see, with what God supposedly has done with your brother and your family? And she said, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." Right? I saw nothing except that which was beautiful. So it forces us to ask this question of what is that thing that is beautiful that you saw? But what is that journey of beauty which is of significance there? And part of that journey of beauty is then just to reflect a bit more deeply on this notion of ziyarah itself, which I will talk about in one of the nights to come, and give that as an example of the way in which this pursuit of the beautiful, as well as the understanding of the ethical implications of the Ahlul Bayt in our lives, what do those things mean for us, and how are they exemplified in this pursuit of beauty through the pilgrimage, and the sort of things that we do in pilgrimage, whether it's from afar or whether it's from near. Because, as I said, we're not in this situation where we are confined by space and time when it comes to our attachment to the Ahlul Bayt. The Ahlul Bayt are here as much as they are in Karbala. They are sitting with us. Sayyid Fatima Zahra, as you know, is famously sitting on the threshold, greeting people who are coming to commemorate and cry over their son. There's a beautiful thing I came across quite recently. I was in Turkey and visiting a Alevi Bektashi center. Now the Alevi Bektashis have love for the Ahlul Bayt, but they do not have necessarily our beliefs. But there's a wonderful thing that when they gather every week, the main thing they do in their gathering every week is they remember what happened in Karbala. That's the center of their ritual. And there's a certain symbolism associated with the door through which you enter their center. So if you ask them, they say, the door is such where the lintel at the top represents the Prophet, and the sides, the left side represents Imam Hassan, and the right side represents Imam Hussein, and the threshold represents Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. And of course, the whole of the door represents Amirul Mu'minin. And what you do when you enter is you touch the right side and you kiss it, because you're kissing Hussein, and you take care not to step on the threshold, because you want to give respect to Sayyidah Fatima Zahra as you enter, and you enter into their presence. I thought that was a wonderfully beautiful thing, because it's something that we are familiar with. We're familiar with this idea that when we step into a Majlis, whether it's the azahana that we have, put together in our houses, or when it's coming to an Imam Barka or Hussainiya, we're familiar with the idea that we are entering into the presence of the Ahlul Bayt. And so this is, I think, a very interesting and nice reminder of this. Now, of course, what I've set forward to you is a kind of a menu of a journey and various themes which I'm going to discuss. But it's also worth just quickly reminding ourselves that the function of a majlis is actually quite simple. It is, as I said, primarily to grieve, to shed tears, to express one's sorrow. And the critical function of the majlis is the narrating of a story, the narrating of the Messiah. Because that is the story which we all know, and yet every year it hits us as if it's a new grief. It's a story which never becomes old, because it hits the heart, and it hits us because it affects those who we love. And in that sense, every time we hear what happens, for example, to Hazrat Khur, or what happens to Hazrat Muslim, or what happens to Hazrat Abbas, it's like it's the first time we've heard it. It's the first time we've heard it. It's a fresh wound. It's a fresh wound in the heart. But it never grows old, because it is that attachment that we have. And the only other thing that a Majlis should do is fundamentally talk about the walaya of the Ahlul Bayt. Because there is no other topic which is worthy. These are only two topics. In the language that we're familiar with in Urdu, it basically means there are only two topics which are worth discussing. One is Fazail and one is Masail. There is no third topic. It's really as simple as that. And everything we do is within this structure. Everything, the continuity of the language and the discourse is always centered on the Ahlul Bayt, because it is their dhikr, their memory, their mention that we are commemorating here. And we are doing it because it is also our own pursuit of what is beautiful. We are all familiar with the famous saying of the Prophet that, beautify, adorn your meetings, your gatherings with the dhikr of Ali. Right? What is that dhikr of Ali? It's mentioning him, and it's remembering him, and even just a simple Ya Ali, it changes the matter. It changes the context in which we find ourselves. And that is that pursuit of beauty which is extremely significant. And the dhikr, that memorialization, the commemoration, that mention is also what makes it present. So as I said, the big theme that I want to be talking about throughout here these nights is the way in which the relationship between memory and presence works. Memory and the mention and the invocation and the memorialization of the person makes that person present. It's very simple. We know this even if, for example, you have a majlis for someone who is departed. If you ask the ulama, they will tell you that by mentioning the person who is departed in the majlis, that person is present. That is true just for anyone. How is that not true for the Ahlul Bayt? That is even truer of the Ahlul Bayt. And it's also the way in which various things that we have in the Hussainiyah or the Imam Bara also act as an act of zikr. So for example, if you have a certain katiba like that with words of the ziyarat, if you have a certain alam, if you have a taziyah, all of these things are then expressing that zikr and making it present, making that reality present. So for example, we have the alam of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, right? When you see that, it has a certain symbolism and it has a certain attachment. But even more than that, by its very presence, it is making that reality present. It is making Hazrat Abbas himself present to us. It's making that whole narrative that we have about Karbala present to us. And that's the importance of the visual as well as the oral. One of the things which is extremely important in any understanding of how it is that we have a sensory experience of the world, is that the different senses work all together and they allow us to imaginatively create something. So part of it's about how we see things, and we live primarily in a very visual culture, so what we see is important. This is why what we see with the alam, with the banja, with the badka, etc., with what is written on it, it's quite important. But then there's also things like smell. We experience things through the smell of it. So this is why you put perfume on the badka, which is why you put perfume in the azafana. There's also what you hear, what is being said around it, what you touch, the tactile nature of the alam that you're touching. All of these things come together in a certain experience of making present. That's a really powerful and significant kind of symbol of it. And the alam, insofar as it is a sign, right? So the term which comes from Allah, meaning which is a sign or a symbol of something, indicates the fact that it's something which can be known and which exists. So another thing which I want to indicate is the way in which memory, presence and existence work together. Memory and dimension works with existence, and we know this, for example, from the Quran, when in the Quran God says, mention me and I will mention you. Do my dhikr and I will do your dhikr. What does this mean? It means doing my dhikr is that you are aware that I am present and I exist. And by the virtue of the fact that I, God, am present and I exist, therefore you are present and you exist. That is what that mutuality of the dhikr is all about. So dhikr in that sense has that sense of that mutuality, of that back and forth, of the association with presence and the association with existence. And memory also, of course, normally when we think of memory, we're thinking about something which we're recollecting, right? So the question is, what is it that we are recollecting? Of course, we are recollecting the story of what happened at Karbala, and we are making it present by our recollection. But we are also responding to certain pledges that have been made, that we have made and others have made on our behalf. The first pledge, of course, is one that we are very familiar with. It is the pledge in the Quran when God says that He drew from the loins of Adam all of humanity in this pre-existence, and He said, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And everyone said, Bala, yes. And of course, the commentators have always said that in this Bala, in this yes, is not just the acknowledgement of divinity of God and His Lordship, but also everything else that this faith and this way of life entails. It includes attesting to prophecy, and it of course famously includes attesting to the walaya of Amir al-Mu'minin. So when we are expressing and recreating the memory and the presence of Karbala, we are acknowledging and going back to the primordial covenant that we made when we said yes to God in our pre-existence. We are remembering that covenant and that acknowledgement in pre-existence. And of course, we are also expressing the sort of the heat and the light of our hearts. There was a famous hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Although of course whether it's a hadith or not is not that straightforward, but which says, إن لقتل الحسين حرارة في قلوب المؤمنين لن تبرد أبدا. Killing of Hussein has created a heat in the hearts of believers which will never cool. Right? This is something, it's a normative statement which is true for all time. And the never cooling, lan tabrid, that's a negative which is used for the future, which is an absolute negative. It can never happen. So if you are a believer, you will always have this heat, this passion in your heart, which is created through the killing of Imam Hussein. It's one of your, so basically, if that expression of heat comes out in the way in which you mourn, and you express sorrow, and you cry, that is the basic expression that you are a believer. You know, a simple thing, if you want to test that you are a believer, sit and remember, you don't even have to go to a Majalis, you don't even have to listen to Masai, you don't even have to listen to someone who is very good at making you cry, because many people are not very good at making you cry. But just remember and say the name Ya Hussein. And if it is not, if you feel it in your heart, you will believe that there is absolutely no doubt about it. And if you see that in your children, you know, if you see that your children are getting up and getting ready and running towards the Majalis, you know that at least something you've done as a parent in your life has been worthwhile. Regardless of what else it might be. If you see your children are getting up and they have this attachment to the Noha, to Majlis, they want to go in the Julus, they want to wear black, they have this attachment and love for Imam Hussein, then you know that at least something you have done, you know, as a parent, even if it is just, you know, a slightest thing which maybe not even be your doing as such, but it's clearly the success that the Ahlul Bayt give us, then you know that something you have done is worthwhile in this life. And we also know the other famous things that we're responding to when we remember the Imam. We're responding to two very famous things on the field of Karbala. We're responding to the Imam calling out, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. And the Imam says, is there a helper who will help us? You're responding to that by coming at least here, so that you're present with the Imam. And as I mentioned before in the hadith of Ibn Shabi, so that you are sharing in the success of those who are with him. And you're also responding to the actual words of the Imam, which he gave as a testament and will to his son, Ali Zayn al-Abidin, when he said, you know, my son, give this message to my followers and say that if you ever drink any pure cold water, I mean, think about it. He's saying that on the afternoon of Ashra, and he's mentioning pure cold water, which is not available. Pure cold water, two things, not just water, pure cold water. He says, when you drink pure cold water, when you hear of someone who has been killed, who is a stranger, and a stranger is someone in a place where he has no friends. If you know of someone who is killed in an oppressive manner, then remember me. Remember me. Remember me, cry over me. It's very difficult every time you pick up. If you have been think about it. Think about when you've been very thirsty and you encounter water and it's cold and it's pure. What do you think of? Immediately your mind goes to Karbala and it goes to Imam Hussein because of that water, because of that simple water. Now, I want to finish with one thing about that particular kind of journey. There's many things, you know. I remember when I was a child and I was a kid, we used to go to these Majalis, the Muhammadi Trust Majalises in Hammersmith Town Hall. And I remember once, Maulana Sayyid Phil said, he said this, and he was quite angry that day, I remember. And he said, you know, why do you want me to act for you and make you cry? You're sitting here in the Majalis, you have the presence of the Ahlul Bayt. What else do you need? Do you need me to actually tell you what happened? Can you not use your imagination? Do you need me to say what happened with the swords and the arrows and the spears? Do you want me to talk about the water? Do you want me to talk about the child being slapped? Do you want me to talk about the baby? What do you want me to say? Is it not just enough that you are here and you hear the name Hussein? Is it not enough for you that you say, Ya Hussein? And it is very true. That is the fundamental thing. We need to always remember that that name, Hussein, is enough. It is that memory, it is that presence, it is that story which is so easily triggered in our minds. We remember the story. We've imbibed this. We've heard this from the womb. This is not something new. We are privileged in that way. We are privileged in that way that we've heard it from the womb. We've heard it in the laps of our parents, of our mothers. We have heard it throughout our lives. And so the simple Ya Hussein should be enough to make us cry. لله وإنا إليه راجعون فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
ہر غم کی یہ دوا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے زینب حیا کی ملکہ کلثوم اور سکینہ لیلا رباب پروا کبرا سکینہ فضا کبرا سکینہ فضا ہر بیوی بارگاہ ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے ابھی دور کربلا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے اصغر سے کھیلتی ہے خوش ہے بہت سکینہ جب چاہتی ہے سونا ہے بابا جا کا سینہ ہے بابا جا کا سینہ غم سے نہ آشنا ہے غم سے نہ آشنا ہے عباس جو زندہ ہے عباس 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 کربلا 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 اے کربلا 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 اے کربلا جانے والی کربلا کی کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والی کربلا کی کربلا لے چل مجھے روزے شبیر پر دوں گا دوبارے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے ہے جہاں گنجے شہیدوں ہے جہاں نہر فرات ہے جہاں گنجے شہیدوں ہے جہاں نہر فرات جس جگہ سید میرا پیاسا رہا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جس جگہ جاگی تھی قسمت ہر کی وہ دیکھوں گا میں جس جگہ جاگی تھی قسمت ہر کی وہ دیکھوں گا میں آسیوں پر کیسے ہوتی ہے عطا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے اس قدر نادار ہوں ذات سفر کچھ بھی نہیں اس قدر نادار ہوں ذات سفر کچھ بھی نہیں دوش پر اپنے بٹھا کر اے حوالے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے اس جگہ میں بھی کروں ماتم ذرا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين السلام عليك وعلى ابنتك فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك وعلى وصيك وخليفتك أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب السلام عليك وعلى والديك الحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة السلام عليكم وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا قاطع البرهان السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان السلام عليك وعلى آبائك الطيبين وأجدادك الطاهرين المعصومين ورحمة الله